norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are white. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too. Welcome back, episode 3. Trace. Yeah. Episode 3, here we are. Boy, girl, mom and dad. Let's go.
Boy, girl, mom and dad. I don't have
I was going to say, let's go.
Oh,
if you want. Okay, anyway. That's for other podcasts. My other podcasts.
These notes look great, by the way. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. So
that
great.
could be in the podcast. Compliments are good.
It's going to be in the podcast. You just don't know it yet. Anyway, before we get into today's episode, let's kind of have a little chit chat. We discussed last week in episode 2 that we wanted to kind of have a tiff that we talk about and go into it and share our sides and just poll the people.
Which is crazy because we never have any fights.
No, never. It's opposite day. Or it's not opposite day, whatever you want to say. But yeah. So I actually went into this episode thinking that we didn't have a tiff, but I was going to say, like, we got a cool new vacuum. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah. That's not a tiff.
I know, but I have one now. But I thought you still want to talk about the vacuum.
You have one now. We can talk about the vacuum and then the tiff.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know if this means I'm old, but I got, shout out Bissell, I just got a brand new Crosswave mop and vacuum combo with the scrubbing brush, and oh, it's awesome. And it's perfect for right after every single meal, under the high chairs, just scrubbing away.
Yeah, he did some research the other night, he was like, I'm going to buy this. I'm like, okay.
Well, no, what happened was we had a conversation about whether we could fit it in our budget, and we did. Mm-hmm. Yes, but it wasn't just, I'm going to buy this, but I did do a lot of research. Mean it like that. And, now I'm like, you guys can just throw whatever you want on the floor. Go nuts. Yeah,
the water is absolutely disgusting whenever it cleans.
After it's cleaned, yes.
Yeah, gross. But we do have toddlers and 3 pets and ourselves, so.
Yes.
There's some dirt.
Yes.
Some dirty people.
Okay,
clean,
what
dirty.
tip are we talking about?
All right, well.
This was your idea to talk about tips.
Yeah. So we kind of mentioned it in episode 1 about the dishes and how you're cool with just putting like a pan in the sink. And so that got me thinking today whenever I saw how nicely you had stacked all the pot. I complimented you and I said you had nicely stacked like the pots and pans and stuff from breakfast in the sink. And they're very beautiful. However, that is the opposite of what I like to do. I'm more of a clean as you go person, and I completely understand that some people mentally cannot do that. But that led me to, I'm not going to bring up that as a tip because it's clearly the right.
You can't bring that up and not let me respond.
The right way. But what my real question is, listeners, is like, how do you put away plates? I refuse to stack plates at the table unless there's like no food on them.
You don't mean put away, you mean clean up plates.
Sure, but put away into the
cabinets.
No, I mean it does. No, we're just you want to have another tip to talk about. Okay. Because I don't want another side of the plate to clean, and I understand it's going in the dishwasher, but I can give another example. But that example is just like, no, I don't want to stack spaghetti plates on top of each other because now there's 2 sides of the plate to clean, not just one. Yep. In the same way, if I have a little container I just melted butter in and I have a pot in the sink, I'm either going to, 1, clean the pot first or remove the pot from the sink and then clean the butter dish. Because why would I want butter all over the other thing I need to clean? Because that's working harder. And your stance is it's going to have to be cleaned anyway. I'm like, I know, but I could spend 30 seconds instead of a minute or however much longer it takes. Butter, so like any oily substance is hard to get off. So anyway, I'm team clean it separately or like don't stack it. So you can talk about your side, Nick.
Great. Hi, I'm Nick. I'm my own representation in this case. So how long did the beautifully stacked on your admission dishes stay in the sink this morning?
I think you're about to make a fight out of something there wasn't a fight about.
Nope. How long did they stay in the sink?
You cleaned them shortly after, but that wasn't what it was about. That wasn't what I was referencing though. So you can talk about that. Great job.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, look, you clean a plate with the same vigor and quality every single time. Front and back.
Vigor? It takes more vigor to get... Sorry, I'm not letting you speak. But it takes more vigor to get off 2 sides of spaghetti or 2 sides of butter than it does to not.
Yeah. As somebody who used to work in the restaurant industry, I could never have cleaned a table quick enough if I did one dish at a time so that they never
That's
stacked
different.
on top of each other.
I will give you that's different.
That's where this all comes from.
At the lovely Chili's establishment.
And I didn't realize how that was one place. I didn't realize that you were just pro dishwasher rights and you were looking out for their, quality of service and their. So look,
I really just like to work smarter, not harder.
The dishwasher is going to clean the front and the back of the plate every time we put it in the dishwasher. Every time.
I know.
So why does it matter that we're stacking them and getting spaghetti on the bottom? It doesn't matter.
Okay, but to the
I'm
sink,
just looking out for
matter.
your time. That's what this is about. This is about you.
Yeah,
and
but I
your
think
time.
my way is saving time. As far I understand the restaurant aspect and clearing the table. I'll totally get that. I think I'm, I guess, more so talking about the sink because we do have differing opinions on that.
Yeah. Well, as we talked about last podcast, not trying to defend myself, but as we talked about last podcast, I've been much better about leaving things in the sink, specifically permanently. And the concession I make to leave things in the sink temporarily is to have the little moments like eating my food when it's hot or drinking my coffee when it's hot or helping clean up the twins thing while something else is sitting in the sink. But the standards we've set that, I think we'll talk about a little bit today, this is actually really good. Did you do this on purpose?
I didn't, but it was.
The standards that we've kind of fallen into, I think, and the patterns we've fallen into is like kitchen's clean every night, so it's clean in the morning. Like every time we finish cooking a meal, for the most part, we clean everything up, even though it takes a little bit of extra time, or it means a little bit of extra Miss Rachel, or the twins need to play with the parts of their bottles a little bit longer,
Toy not toys. We'll talk about that too.
So we have both improved in that.
Yeah.
In that way.
Cool. Okay. You can. And
in the same way that you are pro dishwasher rights, I am pro visual soap suds.
Okay, that's enough. That can be something else. We're
just got a little pin. We'll put a pin.
Okay. I also wanted to say something on last week's episode that I think my sister referenced this morning in just a different way of like we said that I'm type A and you're not in our first episode actually, and Emma said that you're not type A, but you are OCD. An example. She said
possible.
Possible.
Which
OCD.
I have joked for a long time that I have self-diagnosed OCD.
Yeah. So for example, we'll play the game Ticket to Ride, and Nick has
board game.
Yes, it's a board game. It's a great game. Although I think we like the Europe version the best that we played. Anyway, he has to have the trains go all the same way. And it gets him annoyed.
Because trains go the same direction.
Or like the dishwasher has to be a certain way. So
yes. Maximize space.
And I'm just like, get it in there as fast as possible.
Is it weird that I'm an
No.
engineer?
No. But I'm just saying like, you're not type A, but you do have, I think, type A tendencies that could be possibly be categorized in OCD.
Yes. The way I would say it is when I'm going to do something, I have a very particular way I like it to be done.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I just noticed that my water bottle matches my shirt. These are my favorite water bottles, Beaker, because they're glass, and I've used them for years. But I didn't do this on purpose either. So, kind of cute, huh?
Well done. Very cute.
Anyway, let's get into today's episode.
Just did a 4-pointed Z snap. That's right.
We're back in the 90s.
There it is.
So today is called Do It in the Morning or Night? ? And I thought it would be cool to talk about just because Nick and I have different personalities and mentalities on getting things done. And in a partnership like a marriage or being parents together, we have to kind of compromise and meet in the middle. And it doesn't always work that way.
And it's not easy.
It's not easy, but we wanted to talk today about just kind of how we navigate this. And I think why it's important to talk about it because you're likely not going to agree on everything with your partner. And it's good to talk about it so it doesn't build up.
Let's do it. Ready.
So to kind of set the scene, I am a person, to kind of describe it, I'm the person who will do their homework before playing. And Nick is the person who does their homework the morning of, possibly in class 5 minutes before it is due. Now, I do have more like anxious tendencies, but I also feel like it also prepares me better.
Yep. I am much less afraid of failure or possible perceived failure than you are.
But if I can give an example, and if you don't like it, we can cut it. But I like for me, like we've talked about this before, like we had a meeting together a couple weeks ago and I was like, okay, let's prepare for the meeting. And you were like, it's 9:15. The meeting's not till 9:30. I'm like, yeah, but I want to make sure like the Zoom link works and I have everything ready, like, and I'm prepared. And you're like, but sometimes it gets in the way and it can cause you frustration, just like we were going to record this podcast and stuff wasn't ready for it and it caused you frustration because the cameras weren't working. And whereas like you wanted to get started at a specific time, but because you were starting basically at that time, it was frustrating because we only have a certain set of time that we can record and it wasn't ready and it caused you frustration. And so I think that's what I like to try and avoid, because I do have, again, more anxious tendencies, but like if I feel prepared, that's a way that I can like cope, if you will. It's the same reason why I allow sometimes like 20-30 minutes just to find parking for something that I need to go to, just because I arrive anxious and I don't want to have fun at all.
So I hear you. You're right about the frustration about setting up the equipment for the podcast. The reason I was frustrated here, though, is because I did do the work and there were unexpected errors. And that's what pushed back
how
my
life
timeline.
is.
I know, but it did frustrate me.
I'm sorry.
And you're right. Let me give you a little window into the lazy humans of the world. Maybe
You're
that's
not lazy.
good.
I want you to correct that right now. Do we need to do...
I don't mean it negatively, but I
Okay,
guess
well,
it
it
maybe
does have a
carries
negative connotation.
Okay, so
and I
less
don't think
type
you're
A,
lazy.
what you just described, right? You
Yeah.
described me doing my homework at the last minute. It's not that I don't like being prepared. I love being prepared. I don't like doing the preparing.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. So it's not like, I feel like type A people, not to generalize, but I think you view me as just hating anything that has to do with being ready. And it's like, it's not that I don't like that we're ready for something. It's that I don't want to do what I need to do to get ready. I love a clean kitchen. I don't love, that's a bad example because I do like cleaning the kitchen, but I love a clean kitchen, but I don't like spending the time to clean the kitchen. You see what I mean? I love a clean floor, but it's boring to vacuum, except for now when I have my awesome vacuum.
Can you sponsor us, Bissell?
Honestly.
I think where you might view me differently is like, I don't enjoy the prep work. However, I enjoy doing the prep work more than I like feeling the way that it feels to not be prepared. So like it's really just a means to an end for me. So it's a defense mechanism. Defense against the dark arts. That's what I just thought about. But it's a defense against like just being anxious and not being able to enjoy the thing that I want to enjoy.
Fair.
Yeah?
I get it.
Because you think that I probably like it, don't you?
I get it, but in my head, you're always preparing, so you're never able to enjoy.
Yeah, and that is a problem that I have.
Therein lies the balance.
I know, I don't always have a balance, and that's why I think that we like kind of balance each out or
That's
bring
correct.
each other towards an equilibrium.
Which, to make this more applicable and helpful for everybody else, to your earlier point, I think that one of the reasons we are not going insane as parents is that we are meeting in the middle as much as we can, even though sometimes it creates extra fights, sometimes it's difficult, and always it makes us both have to go outside of our comfort zones.
I want to ask a question.
To me?
Well, yeah, and to our listeners as well, because like on that note, like I titled the podcast, like I would rather stay up late and finish something at night, regardless of what it is, than get up in the morning. And I think part of that is because my parents are like night owls, and so is my sister. And I'm not on their level per se, but I think I just felt like I want to get it over with, and I want to be able to sleep and not be stressed in the morning. And I think that one, I wouldn't sleep as well if I didn't get it done, and it's probably a me issue just because of the anxiety that it creates. But also, I've overslept before. I don't get quality sleep, and then I worry that I don't have enough time, whereas if I just stay up late, I will have enough time because I have the whole night. Now, I will say that I feel like I've only pulled maybe 2 or 3 college all-nighters.
That is a low. I would have lost that over under. That's low compared to what I thought you have done.
No, but I think also that I just prepared. I mean, I didn't really. I
guess that does make sense because I've had a lot more.
I never took less than 16 hours, and I think I had 2 semesters where it took 18 hours.
Same.
And I had to stay. Not that you didn't stay on top of it, but like.
Oh, I didn't.
Well, I'm not. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that about you. I'm saying like for me, I had to stay on top of it because, like, I did. Like, if I would have just sunk if I didn't. But I just like made sure I prepared ahead of time. Like I know my mom always said, that whenever there are two opportunities you should take. One, if someone gives you the opportunity to the bathroom, go. You don't know when you'll get to go again. And two, always do the extra credit because you don't know when you'll need it. And so I remember like freshman year, like we had like the extra credit opportunity up front, and I did it like within the first 3 weeks of school because I knew that the semester was only going to get more busy and I didn't want to do it later and I wanted to check it off my list, which...
Did you ever ask the question, what's the latest I can turn in my extra credit?
No. I only missed one class. I overslept one class, and it's because I stayed up too late the night before, and I was freaking out. It was economics, and I like emailed my teacher. I'm pretty sure she didn't care. But we also at Baylor we had
that's where
attendance.
We went to school.
That's where we went to college. We had attendance policy, so it was a part of our grade. Even so, like...
I think the fact that you remember one time and it's stuck in your head that you were late to class or missed classes.
I missed class, I overslept.
Hilarious to me. And it's so, like, I had many of those unintentionally, and some of them attached to all-night studying.
Yeah.
And I don't remember them. I don't remember how many I had, but you had one and you remember the one.
But I still have nightmares where I didn't finish my homework.
Yep.
Like, just, like, as an adult, like, as 30-plus years old.
Never had that nightmare.
Yeah. So anyway, back to my question now that I've gone on a tangent, is I'm back to like, were your parents more like morning people? Do you think that had an impact on it, or what is it you think?
I mean, my dad is 100% a morning person, and I wouldn't necessarily call myself a morning person. I think I've become a morning person. So I'll answer your question, but it's different than what you were describing in my head. Yes, my dad's always been a morning person. He's always waking up, getting everything done that he can before breakfast. Yeah, a good morning influence there. Mom would always get up early as well, especially if there were things that she had to do. But if she didn't have a ton to do, or it wasn't like a busy day or whatever, she would sleep in a little bit. But I mean, she was also, so I guess they were both, I don't think either was a really late night person.
But you'll stay up late.
I will stay up late if I have to do something before the next morning. But the reason is typically I have to stay up late to do it because I didn't do it the previous day, week, or month. So it's pretty rare that there's like a last minute thing that's come up that I have to do that I didn't already have time to do. And I'm curious how you're going to respond to this. I believe that I have an equal workload in general to you. I think that you have more of a parenting workload because of the way we've distributed our childcare. I think I have more of a work workload because, again, of the way we've distributed our childcare and how much time I actually have to spend working and in meetings and stuff. Not to say either one's right or wrong. I think in general, with all those things combined, you and I have equal workloads. I think I'm more comfortable going to bed knowing there's still a heavy workload in the morning than you are. And I don't choose to trade my sleep, which I equate to happiness, for doing more prep work or doing more work to lighten the load of the next day. Because in my brain, I have a set capacity of how much I'm able to work every single day. And I cut my capacity off around the time I'd like to go to bed, unless there's something super critical I have to get done. And most things to me are not super critical. So I can, go to bed at 10:30 knowing I have 5 or 6 things to do in the morning because I'd rather get 6 to 7 hours, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot for us right now. And be able to get up, go to the gym, and, do the other things I want to do in the morning.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you're able to do that because you're able to shut it out, whereas I'm not. And it feels like, again, I think it leads to, it's my anxiety of like, I would rather, and again, you do this, so it's not the same, but I would rather stay up an extra 20 minutes and have all the pots and pans out of the kitchen than wake up and do it because it like doesn't give me a bad day, but it is a poor start for me. And if there are certain things that I know I needed to get done, I probably am not able to shut my brain off. And that also leads to not great sleep for me too. But I think I've gotten better about being able to just stop. Like
That's true.
There will always be a to-do list. There are always things to get done that I will not get to. But if I can get a couple of those things done, then it's great. But I do know how to go to sleep now. And I think that's because like in my 20s, I worked a corporate job and then I also worked on my blog, and I would come home and literally work probably until midnight, and then I would wake up around 4:30 to go to the gym, and that's just not sustainable. So it's not like I didn't like sleep, but I have prioritized sleep better and trying to make sure I get a pretty decent amount, and that's more important than not. I also have learned, to not get burned out. Like, I have to take breaks, and I'm not good at resting, and you know this. And if I don't rest, then I'm often paying for it in the end longer than I would if I would have just taken a break. And so it is hard for me to turn my mind off, but I do think I've gotten better.
Yep. So, do you think we should pivot to talk about parenting things that we have done where we've had to adapt these types of living?
Yeah, but I wanted to say, in the parenting realm, I wanted to say, like, we kind of talked about, like, our scenario. Nick does work from home most of the time, and then I'm here, and then we have a nanny who comes 3 days a week for 3 hours, and so I have, like, that time to work or do whatever, and then we have, like, a short nap time that's, like, maybe an hour and 15, maybe an hour and a half. And so I have that time to work or do whatever. And I think in the days where we don't have her, or even in the days where we do, and I want to relate to everybody here, like when there is a default parent usually. And so, yeah, you were here a lot of the time, but I would say like I'm the default parent of like doing their stuff. And especially those who don't have in-home help, it can be hard because there's not a break. And with everything else, whether it be a physical job where you're moving your body or at a desk, like you have breaks or you can take a minute, whereas the default parent cannot take a break. And so I think that's why there are a lot of fights that I've heard about and seen because the default parent doesn't get a break and it's just not the same. Whereas this is not about you. This is just like the collective non-default parent. It can be hard because yes, you've had a hard day at work, but usually the default parent hasn't had any break at all, and they're also typically carrying the mental load as well, which of course is unseen. So that's why I thought it would be a really good thing to discuss today.
Do you feel like you're the default parent always or just during the work?
No, and I want to talk about that within what we're about to talk about. But I was just more so saying like as a collective for those who may be experiencing it. Yeah, that's why I was saying like clarifying because you're here. Like it's a very, I feel like California parenting experience that like you don't have to be in office. I guess post-pandemic as well, but you don't have to be in the office. And it's a very different scenario because I feel like the twins don't necessarily gravitate to one of us all the time. Whereas like if you weren't here, they might be more excited to see you than they ever are to see me. And I don't think we really have that because of how present you are during the day or the ability you have to be that way.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Or
No, I wanted to clarify because in my mind, the default parent carries with it a negative connotation and an inconsideration of the other partner. So I was trying to see if that is what you meant.
What do you mean inconsideration?
An assumption that the other partner is inconsiderate or not considering the kids or helping with the kids until absolutely necessary. So in my mind, the default parent is the mom or dad who's on the couch after a hard day of work when the kids are...
The default parent is the one who is taking care of them most of the time.
Sorry, I stated backwards. You're correct. I mean to say the other parent is the one on the couch after maybe a long day's work. Kids are screaming. Things obviously have to be done, but they're not doing anything until the default parent says, hey, please get up and help me.
Yeah.
So in my mind, default parent carries with it that connotation, which is why I was asking you to clarify, see if you felt that way. Because we do have a fairly clear distribution during the workday where I'm typically not able to help, and if I can, I do. No. That's why I was making sure.
I agree with you that the not default parent, I think, typically has a negative connotation, and the default parent typically maybe is angry or upset, or at the very least, like passive aggressive and tired. But I didn't mean it in like that. I was just doing the roles
I get
in
it.
general.
That's all I was clarifying.
Let's get into how to compromise and work together as a parenting team, and just try and help you navigate your life. And so the first tip that I have is just teamwork. I think that Nick and I are a really good team. We don't have things like I don't do this, you only do this type things, but we do have like a cadence. So for example, Nick will usually get the twins out of their room. He is typically making them breakfast. I typically make lunch and dinner. You know, he walks the dog. There are things that we have that, but then there are also times where we operate outside of that when we need to, but it's also not a tally system, and we are quite literally always working together.
Yes. I think the assumption here, or rather what has to be established, is that there should be equal participation. You know, I'm thinking of like Ted Lasso and other sports movies and shows and stuff. Like, there is no teamwork unless you're putting in the effort everybody else is also putting in. And that doesn't mean one person isn't better at a specific thing than the other, or we don't fall into patterns or responsibilities, maybe positions, to continue with the sports analogy. But it does mean the effort is equally exerted when it's able to be. So to your point, like, it makes sense in our current life that you're the primary caretaker typically during the business day or when I have to be away for work. You know, which allows that piece of our income to come in to support the kids, right? Equally so, it's always been my expectation that, even though I haven't always been good at it, that time that I'm not working or time that I am working where I need a break or can give time at all or reschedule my meetings or something, that I give that help not to you, which suggests that you're the person that needs the help, but to the kids, right? Because in my mind, the goal is equal participation. I don't even think of it as 50-50. Like, I think of it as we both are 100% responsible for being parents, you know? So when we're able to, we put that time in.
Yeah, and I think that involves checking in on one another, because sometimes, you know, Nick can see I'm like overstimulated or overtouched and I just need a minute. And if that means I can take 10 minutes just to go lay on the bed, or if I need a bathroom break or need to take a shower or something like that, he's able to notice that. And yeah, I wanted to say, you've had to travel lately for work. And so there are some days where I'm doing exponentially more than what I would usually do. But again, I'm not keeping a tally of that. We are a team and we work together. And that's how we're able to keep it going, because sometimes you have a team member who isn't able to participate as much, whether it be like, you know, in the beginning when the babies were teeny tiny, like I was still recovering from a C-section, even in the hospital, like postpartum room, I could do pretty much nothing because I was strapped to the bed with the little things on my legs to make sure that my muscles didn't atrophy, and you were having to do a lot. And I feel like that could have been easy to resent me because I'm theoretically just laying there doing nothing. But you know, there are times
Never did I have that thought. That's hilarious to me.
Well, when one team member will have to give a little bit more, and again,
that's a good point.
You're not keeping a tally of that. I don't have a tally of like what I've done more and what you've done more. And I think
you haven't seen my notes app. I'm just kidding.
Shoot,
I don't
whatever.
have a tally.
You're not taking notes.
Good one. Well done.
Bazinga. But like, yeah, and if there is a problem or that I feel like slided in a way, like I voice it, which I really haven't had, but I think that that's important too.
Yeah.
Because that's part of also working together as a team, is like voicing that, because you're going to not work as well if you don't.
So I think the reason I don't want to spend too much time on this point, but the reason I think I'm talking about establishing that model and that you are teammates is because even though it seems maybe obvious in your partnership that it would be that way, I don't think it feels that way in practice. So run with me. I think you always expected that I would be an equal partner in parenting. I think that you had to be convinced of it in the early days of us raising twins. And I think, for example, you felt like you had to carry all of the mental load, like you were doing all of the research, like you were the one that had to manage the parenting task list, aside from me just providing childcare help and diaper changes and stuff like that. So even though I was trying to and did have the expectation of myself that I would give 100% of me to being a parent, you still had to be proven of that. And I'm not saying that's any fault of yours. I'm just saying I think having that baseline discussion and confirmation prior to the birth of your kids of, hey, like, here are general things we want to do and we're both 100% in this, or like somebody has a really demanding job or they travel a lot or something, and it is understood there will be an unequal balance of the parenting burden, and you know, I would assume the person who isn't able to give as much as the other gives more than they otherwise could in the free time they have or the time when they're home or whatever. So I'm just saying setting the baseline first is important so that it's an easier bridge. Because I do think, this is me assuming, I think everybody has to have their partner prove to them the ways in which they're going to support so that they can continue to grow from there. And I don't mean prove their worth or value. I mean, like, show that they're actually trying, you know, and that they're in it with you. Because you did have to be convinced of that. And I think it's fully fair that you did, but you didn't know.
I acknowledge what you say. I don't remember that. Maybe I'm thinking of, like, I know I did, like, spend a ton of time researching, especially for twin stuff, because it's like, okay, there's all this information out there, but a lot of it isn't valid for twins. And I also was more in, like, the non-toxic sector, which is even a smaller area and requires a lot of reading and research. And I think was one, like, maybe the research that I did in the spreadsheet, and I wanted your help to look at it, and, like, you didn't want to do it or couldn't make time for it, or it felt like work and you didn't want to do it. And I'm just like, dude, like, I spent all this time. The least you could do is, like, look at it with me, because I don't. And okay, cool. I would say the first few months, when a lot of the care of the children had to be from you, like breastfeeding and other things, like pumping and other things that you had to do that I couldn't do. I think that you had to see that I was going to contribute in other ways and help to prop us up. But I guess, just so you know, I don't feel that way. Like,
I don't think you ever did.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying,
okay, cool. I thought you were saying that.
No. That's why I'm not criticizing you in any way. I'm saying, cool, we both talked about being equal parents and expected that of ourselves at the beginning, right? We didn't know until we jumped into actually having kids and starting to raise them what that would look like. And I think that, I think both of us, but it felt from my side like you needed me to prove that I was going to be the parent we both expected me to be. Whereas, I don't know, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, I mean, I know your personality. I know where, I don't know, your, quote, flaws. I mean, I don't think you have any flaws, but, you know. But I always thought you would be a good dad.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I expected that of myself as well. I'm just saying you don't know until you get into it, you know?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I don't think, I'll say it this way. The way we feel right now as a team, we didn't always feel that way. And we both wanted to be 100% parents, right? Even though we wanted to be a team, we were not a good team yet. We had growing pains at the beginning in figuring out how to clean bottle parts and do formula stuff and when to change diapers and how to change, like, all these things. So I feel like it wasn't easy to see how our pieces going to fit together. And now they're fitting together better, so it's easier to feel like we're a team, even though the same theoretically effort was being exerted.
I guess I just want to clarify that when you say prove, it's prove yourself. It sounds, to me, it has like a negative connotation, and I never felt that way. I think it's just the natural point of learning, like, our own cadences and working together. Because sure, we weren't a great team yet, but we just had to figure that out, and it just took the only thing that could prepare us for that was actually being in the trenches. And that's how I feel about it. It's just figuring out what works versus, like, you have to prove yourself.
That's probably a better way to state it. I don't mean prove as in the other person assumes you're going to fail or you are expected to prove. I think it's more you, to your point, want to find comfort in the dependability of your partner.
Yeah.
Or the other parent.
Okay. Wow. I think we exhausted that topic in a good way.
Yes, we
I didn't
did.
think it was going to be.
And at the beginning of it, I said, I don't want to spend too much time on it. And then I kept saying things about it. So
love it.
Let's move
Here
talkative Nick on.
All right, Mother's Day is coming up May 14th, so if you don't have a gift for your mom yet, or you want to get a gift for a new mom or a friend who's a mom, or get yourself a gift because you deserve one, I would highly recommend Lunya pajamas. My favorite are their 100% silk pajamas, but they have other luxurious fabrics too, and we have a code for you. It is BGMAD. It's just the
BGMAD.
Yeah, it's just the acronym of Boy, Girl, Mom, and Dad, and it gets you 15% off your first order from Lunya when you spend over $100.
Wow, what a deal.
Honestly, it's so luxurious, and what makes it really cool is the silk is machine washable, which, historically speaking, you had to hand wash it or send it to the dry cleaners, but you just throw those bad boys in the washing machine and you're good to go. All the luxury, none of the extra work.
Go get them. BGMAD.
Okay, the second thing that I think is important is just prioritizing and understanding and thinking of each other. And the one thing I want to say about this that as a way, like, we kind of, like, keep ourselves in check is, like, I'm a member of these mom Facebook groups, and I'm not breaking any rules. I'm not screenshotting them. I'm not posting them or sending them, but I will read them to Nick. and it serves as kind of just like a check-in as like, wow, let's never get to this point, or what do you think? Like, how do you feel about this scenario? It's like a word problem that we work on together.
To clarify, it's not a dad bashing group.
No.
It's not, when she says she reads them to me, there are a ton of different scenarios. It's not like, look at what this bad dad is doing that or sounds mom. Like you. Right. It's not that. That's all I'm
It's more so people are sharing the scenarios that they're currently dealing with. And some of them are just heartbreaking, and I cannot imagine it. And so it's also a way that I'm kind of just like, okay, like, thanks for being you and thanks for always helping. But again, we kind of just talk about it just to where, like, hopefully we don't get in those scenarios.
I think it provides perspective.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say that we look down upon people who have things more difficult than us. It's more like when you're in this kind of a journey and it feels so difficult and so dark at times, it's very hard to understand that you're not like at the worst you could be. And I'm not saying there's joy in reading other hardships, but like it does give you perspective, you know? As an example, like this is a completely different subject, but like we're at church 2 weekends ago, and something we've been struggling with a lot is meeting people who are families who like we're able to hang out with. Maybe they have kids the same age or whatever, but like meeting people who are families and building relationships there has been something that's really tough in this city of Los Angeles. And we're at church and the pastor asks like, okay, you know, who here has like parents in this city or something? What was the question?
Do you live near your family?
Do you live near your family? And like we felt very alone and that we didn't have a lot of family friends. And we look around and one hand went up of like 1,000 people in that room. And it was just, it feels funny to me like these Facebook groups is like when you feel like you're alone in something that feels very dark and painful, it's good to know that other people are there with you. So a lot of the things you read to me, some are perspective building and some are like, oh, other people are dealing with the same thing that we're dealing with as well.
Yeah, which is also...
Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, which is also why, like, I created BoyOurMom.com and even, like, on my own personal blog, Elements of Style, is because, like, I wanted to talk about things that I felt like maybe weren't discussed, and then if I can help make one person feel not alone, then, like, my job is done, because, like, I don't want to feel alone.
I don't feel alone.
Well, you're not alone unless you want to be, and that is our tagline for a reason.
I don't think I ever want to be alone.
Well...
All right. Extrovert champion.
Okay. I think that in understanding people and thinking of them, it's also in regard to their personality and approach. So I kind of mentioned it in the last section of like, Nick's like, okay, you need a minute. Like, I'm going to swoop in and just take an hour, or like I can block off my calendar for this time. So I think that that's important and like part of what like prioritizing and understanding or seeking to understand. The other thing that I will give an example in regard to Nick is like, yeah, he's been working all day, and even sometimes the extrovert gets tired, and he views a lot of things like after hours as work. And so I tried to accommodate his schedule and be like, okay, well, instead of being like, we need to talk about this now, I'm like, when can we talk about this? Can we put it on the calendar so he's mentally prepared for it? Because that's a way easier conversation, even if it's something as simple as like, or as fun as like looking at flights to book, you know, that isn't something he always, like, he's not always up to do it, and maybe he just wants to relax. And if I like go into it thinking about him, it actually also helps me too. Not to make it about me, but I think it will benefit you to think about others.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Same note from the other side. Something that we've recently done and sounds so simple, and this is not going to be revolutionary advice, is we have a family task list that we're sharing right now. Mm. And I recommended that we have one, even though we've tried before and it didn't work so well.
It's the reminders list, right? On the iPhone.
Yeah. I mean, you can use any platform, but that's the one that works for us. It's just a simple shared one list of high priority things we need to get done. But I think it helps Lauren to feel like she's not carrying all the burden of all the things we need to do, parenting or otherwise. And it also allows me to see the things I need to do and choose when I get to do them, as opposed to your earlier point, having to do them immediately. Because I felt a lot of times like when she was consistently, her mind works where there's a downtime, that's time for her to get things done, because she wants her never-ending to-do list
to think of others.
To end. Yeah. So I'm not saying you don't think of others in that. I'm saying that's the way your brain works.
It isn't fair to think because you have downtime, you need to be doing something. That's not fair of me. So that's
true.
Saying.
That's I don't like the word fair, but I understand what you're saying. It's not the way my brain works.
As someone who sometimes thinks that, I think it's not fair of me, so I'm sorry.
Sure. I almost just said fair, which would have been fine. But yeah, so point being, I would prefer not to be approached with a laundry list of things to do as soon as I've sat down to not do things.
Yeah.
But you would also prefer to understand what we need to do so that when you're ready to work, which is sometimes more than me, you can parse down a list that you already have organized for yourself. So I think there's still opportunities for us to improve that thing, but like having that and you asking me like, when is a good time to talk about this? Sometimes now is a good time, right? But allowing that space is helpful for me, where I think the list is helping you.
Yeah, and I think how it works for us is like we try to have a budget meeting every Sunday evening, and then we just kind of have it stacked. And like as part of that discussion, we go down the reminders list and talk about like what has been done or what we need to add to that or what we should prioritize for this week.
Yep. And it's also started to work as a week planning a little bit.
Yeah.
With like, hey, what are some of the like workout classes, twin appointments, like work in office days if I have them, things like that. Mm-hmm. We're good about putting those on the calendar, but when we need to discuss them, I think sometimes falls on that night, which is good.
Yeah, because it's not like he said, it's not always a good time. So instead of like texting him like, hey, can we talk about this? I can sometimes put it on the reminders list, and then I remember, because so it's like off of my mental load, like I like wipe it off my shoulder, and like I can talk about it another time, which is huge for me to be able to just kind of like not think about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else on this one? I think
There's something you said that I wanted to respond to, and I forgot what it was. I mean, I think that's good. I think, like, we didn't talk about the understanding too much. I think, to put a bow on what we've talked about for this point, assuming that your partner's brain works the same way as yours does is probably going to get you into trouble. So if you're frustrated with something...
You know what they say about assuming.
Yes, it is.
We don't have to say it.
So difficult. Yes.
This is a clean podcast.
It is up to this point.
It will be a clean podcast.
Yeah.
Except for dirty diapers.
Oh, gosh. That was a bad one.
It was a dirty one.
So if you're if you're assuming that your partner's brain works the same way as yours, you're going to get yourself into trouble. If it did work the same way as yours did, they would be frustrated about the same thing you're frustrated with them about. So stepping into that space with how can I help, as opposed to why are you pissing me off, is going to be really, really helpful. And I'll clarify, we're not very good at this. I think we've gotten better at it, a lot better at it. And it's also not a unique problem, but just like, if somebody, if your partner is not cleaning the dish the way you want them to clean the dish, they probably have a reason, and it's probably not to hurt you, So step into like, hey, can you help me understand this? Or like you did a few weeks ago, and I took it the wrong way, but like you texted me when I was on my way to work in one of my few office days, and you were saying like, hey, just so you understand how my brain works, when the kitchen's this dirty, like, and you're not around to do it, and I still have all these kid things to do, it completely loads up my day, and all these things happen. And you're completely right and justified in that. I took it as you insulting me and saying, why didn't you clean the kitchen before you left? But what you were trying to do is what I just recommended. You were trying to provide that insight into why that clouds up your brain, where it may not cloud mine up the same way. So even if I'm not able to help with that every single time, it's still powerful for me to know about it so that I can hopefully consider you better in the future and vice versa.
Yeah. And you were talking about helping and helpful, which actually makes us go to the seamless transition to number 3. And it's about asking for help, not being silent, not letting it grow and like bubbling over or being passive aggressive.
Yes.
Because in that way, you're just setting someone up to fail. And an example for this is like I said, like if we're not sending the laundry out, typically I'm the one to do it. But before we even used a service, I felt like it was on me, and I felt like I had to do it during the week, and it took away time that I had to work. And so I was doing all these household tasks because I felt like I couldn't work and focus on what I needed to without getting them done. But I also felt like if we needed to do it on the weekend, you would be frustrated at me that we spent time doing laundry. So anyway, asking for, and then it would create this like, is the dichotomy the right word? I don't know. Where we would just, it was like a catch-22 of when to do it. And so like, I've asked for like, hey, can you put this load of laundry in? And it's just so helpful. And also just to give a little of information on us is that we live in LA in an apartment and we have community laundry. So we have to take it outside of our apartment into the garage and do it and pay for it. And the laundry machines don't work that well. And they often like leave clothes more dirty than not. So that's just some context for us. So it's not as easy as just like throwing the laundry in. I've never had a problem with laundry until coming here and then having to experience laundry in this way.
Yeah.
So
as I like to say, if you're wondering if you live in LA and you're wondering if you're wealthy or not, just if you have a room where you have your own washer and dryer, you're above that line.
We're on the west side where that's less likely to be there. If you go further inland, then you're more likely to have one. But anyway, just simply asking for that, I didn't feel like I could ask, but you never said that.
Right.
And like it's just like,
and I would have helped,
right? And it's just like the assuming part here, but that's just an example where I've had to ask for help.
We had this conversation a lot around laundry because you're like, why do I have to ask? And I know it needs to get done, therefore Nick must know it needs to get done. And in no way was I thinking, oh, this is a magic thing that happens. Like I don't consider you my magic laundry person. You do typically prefer to do it because you have a way that you like it done. And honestly, when I've tried to help in the past, specifically before kids, it doesn't work out so well. So I do other things and you've fallen into the laundry pattern. But after kids, where the burden was heavier because we had a lot more kid things to do and raising kid things to do, especially with babies, I think you did expect me to do that laundry without us discussing it.
Yeah, and I think some background on me is I feel like my family is very helpful is not the right word because you're super helpful. But maybe just we can like predict what you were going to need, or like I guess that's like high executive functioning of like figuring out what you need and not even have to think about doing it. And that's just kind of like the environment I've been around, and so you're not like that. And so it was like an
I need words to do that.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that because why should I assume that you're going to do something? That's almost passive aggressive if I get like upset about it.
That's the way it comes off. No offense, but that's the way it comes off.
Yeah, because like I'm always thinking about like others. And again, not that you're not, but I'm like, what can I do for them? How can I help? How can I make their life easier? But you feel like I'm not.
If I'm not acting the same way as you.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm going to belittle myself and I'll use the restroom last at a group trip or something, or like I'll save that banana for someone else, and then I get offended when someone doesn't think of me like that.
Right, even though they're not trying to attack you or be malicious to you.
No, it's not malicious at all.
It feels that way because you expect that of other people.
But often I feel like my high expectations are just really high, and it's sometimes hurtful.
I think your expectations of yourself are very high. So that bleeds into your expectations of other people.
And I wanted to list this as number 3 just because I think I have a hard time asking for help because I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to do it myself at that point because like I'm going to do it the best and not necessarily giving another opportunity to someone else to even try.
Which I would love if I was a husband that didn't care about helping. Otherwise it's frustrating, you know? Like there's these, you're not this way at all, but this is what it's making me think of. There's those TikToks and videos of like, you know, wife asks husband to take out the trash. Husband says, yeah, I'll get to it right away. 2 minutes go by, and then wife frustratingly opens the trash. It's like we could, in my opinion, we could use communication to fill that gap. And I in no way think you're that bad. But there are times where you're like, hey, can you take this laundry for me? And I'm like, sure, I'll get right to it. And the first capacity point I have to do it is 5 or 10 minutes away, and I haven't done it yet. You get visibly frustrated.
I have to race to the laundry, make sure someone else doesn't have to.
I understand, but like, to me, my preference would be to receive those words from you. So if you tell, like, I'm very literal and I'm very word focused and communication focused. You know this, right? I'm telling it for other people who are listening. So if you tell me, hey, can you get this laundry out when you get a chance? That's me filing it away in the next available point I have, right? Like, it's my fault if I sit down or forget and just don't do it. That's me not considering you and doing what I need to do, right? Separate point. But in my head, because you've asked it that way, it's okay for me to do it in 5 or 10 minutes or maybe an hour if that's the earliest time I'm going to do it. If I'm doing it, I'm still taking the burden away from you. And in my head, since you've asked me, you should stop worrying about it. But that's not what you're thinking. What you're typically thinking is, I need it done here and now for this specific reason, or within a certain time frame for this specific reason. So you need to communicate with, you're doing this already. I'm just communicating what we've talked about in the past, right? You've gotten better about this. We're like, hey, can you get this laundry in before you take Dino out? Or can you put this laundry load in? I think somebody else is competing for it. Like, you should probably go quickly, right? And then I know, oh, this is something I need to pull up in my priority list. And it's not that I'm more willing to do it because you've asked that way. I'm equally willing to do it. but I just understand more about where your brain is and why you're thinking it needs to be done that way. So I can meet your expectations better because I understand what they are.
Right. And I think I can definitely be passive aggressive about that because it feels like I can't check it off because now I have to babysit you or micromanage you on something that I could have just done myself and already checked off.
Which, of course, I hate micromanaging. So, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want me
that
to ask
fights.
it, but you might forget about it. I don't know. I think it's because, like, I take on that for others. So if someone asks me to do something almost to the detriment of myself, I will prioritize that above me. And
I would say absolutely to the detriment of yourself, you do that.
Yeah, and so then again, it just goes back to me expecting that of others. But I feel like we're kind of off topic. Not totally, but...
No, I think asking for help is right in what we're talking about.
No, we're asking for help, but we're just talking about me and my problems like we're in a therapy session.
No. That was both of us.
Okay.
Right? So I don't consider you passive-aggressively reacting to those things as a fault or a flaw.
Yeah.
I think it's you expecting something of me, and my brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
right? So it's also unfair for me to expect you to tell me exactly what you need to do without communicating that to you or without you understanding that's how my brain works. It's a point of us meeting in the middle because I don't think it's unreasonable based on all the data points you already gave, like the way you were brought up, the way you've lived your life. Like you are very good at perceiving what other people need and you just do it and you don't really need a lot of that verbal communication. I'm almost completely the opposite. I do need the verbal communication and I expect of myself to be very clear in my words, phrases, and sentences and communication when I need something to happen or when I need to do something for you and I want to clarify things, right? This created a lot of fights for us in the past, but I don't think it's because you're better or I'm better or you're worse or I'm worse. I think it's we work differently and this is a way in which we have to be a team.
Yeah, I think the whole point of this section that we've talked about thus far is just that ask for help. It's imperative, but also acknowledging that it's hard.
Yes. And can I say something else about asking for help? So,
yeah.
And you've gotten really good about this. So you said earlier, if somebody asks you something at the detriment of yourself, you typically do it. I know that that's your bent, but do you remember how we've dealt with this and what I've asked of you when I ask you to do something and you don't think you can do it? I'm leading you down a path.
We talked about it. I mean, about the vacuum. Are you talking about that?
No,
Where
I'm
I say I
saying,
don't have the capacity to do that?
Yeah. So yesterday morning, I said like, hey, can you get me this thing or whatever? Like, because you were in the kitchen, I needed something from the kitchen. And you said, no, it's not a good time. I can't do that right now.
You asked me for Dino's leash.
Yeah.
I was cleaning up a spill on the floor.
Sure. But like, didn't matter. So past you, and I think part of existing you, but past you would hear that request, drop what you're doing, do it, and then be frustrated that it was in the way of the thing you were already doing, right? Yeah. As if it was unfair for me to ask you for a thing you're right next to, right? But now you've gotten really good at being like, no, I can't, right? And when we first started doing that, we both do that now. We're very honest in our answers, like, no, I can't do it right now, or this isn't a good time, or like, no, right? We're understanding that it is not us saying, no, I don't care about you, or no, I have something that's more important. It's just like, I don't have the capacity to do this right now. So no, right? And inherently our requests should allow for the answer we don't expect, right? So if I ask you like, hey, can you hand me that leash and you can't, that's okay. I was asking for you to bridge and help me. Just because you can't doesn't mean I'm unable to do it or I can't put that extra effort out, right? It's okay. I think that me accepting your no has been a challenge because it's annoying to me when you're next to something and I can't get it from you, right?
And it's not a pattern. It's a newer pattern.
For sure. It's something that I'm getting used to, even though it is what I need.
Yeah.
And I think you are getting more comfortable with, even though it's uncomfortable for you, being honest in those moments. Because, again, in the past, you think I'm laying an expectation on you and that you saying no to me is you failing and you not meeting my expectations. But my expectations are for you to clearly communicate.
Yeah.
I'm not measuring success based on whether you can do enough favors for me. I'm measuring success based on whether we're working as a team together. And you telling me, no, I can't do this right now is successful. That's you saying, I don't have the capacity to do it. So we should be comfortable in that. So my point is, your point 3 of asking for help, it doesn't mean ask for help and your partner should always help. It means communicate and ask for the things you need so that your partner knows that you need them. They may not be able to do those things. And that doesn't mean they're deficient or not willing to help. It may mean there's a broken jar on the floor and they need to clean up the berries and the broken glass so people don't step on, like it usually, I would say, this is my optimistic brain, usually that's the case. It's usually not, oh, I don't want to help you, or no, I don't really care about that, or no, I'd rather watch the show. Like, it's usually not that. Does that make sense?
It does. And I just want to acknowledge before I move on that I think that, I said it before, but I think that you're a really good partner and you have a high emotional intelligence. And I feel lucky to be able to have this conversation with you, because I know that's just not the case for everybody.
Is your goal to make me cry in every episode?
No, I just felt
That's
like it needed
sweet.
to be
Thank
said
you.
because I just know like that we're having this conversation very effortlessly, and I don't think that some people can even think about having this conversation effortlessly. And it's not that it's easy to go through these things, and do life, but I feel like it's easier with you.
Well, I very much appreciate that. It's very sweet.
Mm.
I want to say, so this is again maybe my optimistic brain. I really believe that a lot of guys want to help this much, and they don't know how to say it. They don't know how to communicate it. They don't know how to bridge the gap. So I think like everybody would be served well expecting that your partner wants to help you, and there's a way to engage them to do it.
Do you think that they don't like, okay, I need to back up for a second. I thought we were closing the book. We're opening the book. Do you think that that's a society thing, that like it's not manly to help or something? I don't know.
No, I'm saying I don't think most dads want to be absent dads.
Oh.
I'm saying...
But I think... Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's basically
I think there might be some who don't think not doing these things are making them an absent dad.
Sure.
Or maybe an absent partner.
Therein lies the need for communication. But what I'm saying is, to our earlier point, let's approach the things we want to grow in and the things we want our partner to grow in with grace and with optimism, and enter into that place of communication to hopefully understand more about how to help each other. Because I don't think you're telling me you can't get Dino's leash. I think you're telling me something else is in your way and you're not able to help at this moment. I think more often than not, that's the guy's position as well.
That's very
and he's just
optimistic
not
of you.
able. I know. And I'm not claiming to have data and know this for a fact. I'm just saying, like, I would be very surprised to meet a dad that's like, I don't really, like, that's her thing, You
don't think, like, that's women's work? Like, you don't think that I'm not saying you don't think
that I know
that
that people think that way. I'm saying with our generation and a lot of guys that are currently stepping into parenthood, I don't think that's their character and their nature.
How would you suggest someone who feels resentful towards their partner, let's just say... Like, how would you want to hear that if I was feeling... I mean, again, I can't even ask you that because you're going to take it differently than the person who thinks that that's not their job or that they don't have to.
Yeah, I'm like
job.
I'm radical candor.
I just don't know how, like, I know that somebody listening to this has that problem. Not a specific person, but, like, I know that listeners will listen to this and say, shoot, like, I don't know if I can even have that conversation because, like, with my husband because of, like... they don't think it's their job, or like, I don't know, I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but I don't know. How would you suggest that they try to approach that conversation to I would say, stereotyping the men that we just talked about?
I think creating the space to talk about this stuff is step one. So, and what I mean is, if you're frustrated with me and don't think I'm providing value or contributing or putting effort into helping raising the kids specifically, if you come at me and say that, we're not going to have a great conversation. So
what you're saying, to kind of just translate for you there, I think you're saying is to, when you're feeling it, to say it and not let it build. But yes, but I'm also saying, like, so let's say you feel like Nick's not helping enough, right? Valid thought and feeling. And you may be right. Valid thought and feeling. If you come at me and say, like, hey, I think we should talk about how we can switch some stuff up, help support our kids a little bit better. Like, let's talk about things we can do, we collectively as a team, I just hit the mic again, to help provide a better environment for our kid or kids. And that to me doesn't say, hey, I'm here to talk to you about how you're screwing up and need to step up, right? Easiest way to get a guy to back off a little bit is to tell him he's not being enough of a man, right? So if you come up and say, like, you're not giving me what I need, while that is direct,
most guys, I would say, I don't want to generalize too much, I think that's off-putting, and that's not a space I want to live in. I want to live in a place where you're assuming I do want to be a heavily participating father, and if there's something you're seeing that doesn't match up with who you think I am in being a good father, we should talk about it collectively.
But the reason why I said, like, when it first comes up is because if I wait, I'll get more frustrated and more angry. So,
for sure, bring it up as soon as possible.
Like, yeah, so I'm saying bring it up as soon as possible. You also said, like, to make it about the kids, not necessarily myself, which I don't...
Yeah, or about the team, to bring our point back to earlier.
I think, though, that something that's hard for you sometimes, and you're great at listening, is that you hear what I'm saying and think that I mean it negatively, or take it like that other things you're doing aren't great. So how would you... I mean, we still deal with this, and so how would you suggest someone deal with that?
Yeah, but when that happens, it's about a specific thing.
No. It's like, okay, for example, hey, you know, the pots and the pans, whatever. And you're like, but I took out the trash and I cleaned the litter box and I took out Dino. And it's like, in the moment that I'm bringing up something, no matter how nicely it is, sometimes it's hard for you to not think that I'm saying everything you do sucks.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or nothing else is valid.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'm saying, how can I do better? How can other people combat that?
I don't think that you did anything wrong there, and I took responsibility for taking that defensively, even though you didn't mean it defensively. But I think that is a good example of a way that I would want to be approached. Like, I know I didn't react well in that way, but I think in the past, the way that you have delivered feedback is negative, whereas you're not doing that so much anymore. Yeah. So I think I'm used to hearing... when there's a problem, you're assigning it to me.
I know, but you're not answering the question. You sometimes think it's like I'm invalidating everything else you're doing. So, like, how would you say, like, as a listener and for me, like, how does that...
Yeah.
How can we combat that?
I'll give another example. So, like...
I guess being more gentle, I don't know.
Well, yeah. Like, because the underlying assumption should be that you're in this together.
Yeah. Teamwork, back to number one.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, it doesn't mean that you're always perfectly giving equal effort, and you're, like, if anybody is feeling like the partner is not, you know, there as much as they are, or not contributing as much as they are, like, that's valid in some way. There's some issue that needs to be fixed there, or a set of issues that need to be fixed there, or a way you guys can grow together. But what it does not mean is that the partner you have doesn't care about the kids as much as you, doesn't want to help as much as you're helping. It usually means you just don't understand, or they just don't understand, and you guys need to come closer together, whether it's through communication, consideration, examples, whatever.
And I guess sometimes that means a fight. I guess I'm saying, like, how do we work around it?
Well, fight's fine, but I more mean, like, it needs to be positively approached. Yeah. So I would say...
not passive-aggressively.
Or aggressively, but yes.
Sure.
The way it's typically approached is like, hey, like, you need to do this. I feel like I'm underwater here, and here, and you need to step up and do this.
You're saying I say that?
No. Oh. I'm saying that's
I don't think
that's the general way I think those things are communicated. Because to your point earlier, aggressively, right? Not just passive aggressively. And it's just like, you wait too long. Yeah. Not you or women, just the collective person who wants something to be addressed. Yeah. They wait too long. It's bubbled up. They're angry about it, which is a valid feeling. Yeah. They're feeling unequally, like, participated in with the thing or whatever. I've said that wrong, but, like, they feel like their effort is more than the partner's effort. They have reasons to be upset. If you come at the person who you're frustrated with in that way, I don't think there's a great opportunity there to create a space for honest communication. So to your earlier question of how do we bring those things up if you feel like you're not in one of those relationships, you assume your other partner or your partner is in it with you as much as you want them to be. Yeah. And if you don't feel like they are, let's just work on that. Let's not work on their identity. Let's not work on them being a bad father. Let's not try and lift them up because they're screwing up. Let's come together and figure out how can we be a better team. Because the problem in my mind, I know we work differently here. In my mind, if something's wrong, it's not that I'm doing something wrong or that you're doing something wrong. It's that you and I as a team have a problem. The problem's over here. It's not with you and I. We are not people at fault who need to be fixed. We are people who have a problem that's over here that we need to work together to address. And you see what I'm saying?
I do. And I think for me, sometimes, and I'm sure other people feel this way too, sometimes I see what has happened or what hasn't been done, and I take it personally. Yeah. Because I'm like, you don't care about me. It goes deeper than just like the task wasn't done.
It's fair. But to your earlier question, I'm not telling you not to feel those things. I'm saying when you address your partner, if you accuse them, tell them the way that they're making you feel, right? And you come in with this assumption that they're not doing what you're doing, or they're not as available, or they don't care as much. Are there people that way? Yeah. But I think they're majorly in the minority. I think they're very small of a group compared to what we think of our partners.
Okay. So just to wrap it up, come at it swiftly, gently, and make it about the problem, not about the person, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more thing, I'm sorry. Okay. Another thing I would say is offering a carrot of something you can improve is a great way to enter the conversation humbly. So like, hey, I want to talk about, like, I think there are things we can both do to help little Sally out, like to be better parents for little Sally. Like, I've recognized I haven't, like, that's one of your superpowers, right? I've recognized I haven't done this thing well for you. I don't know if you felt that or thought about it, but I'm going to try and do this thing better. And here's how. You see what I mean? So already I'm coming to you saying, I'm not talking about how you're screwing up. I'm coming and saying, we have this thing I want to get better at. Let's get better at this thing as a team.
Yeah.
Here's a way in which I think I can get better at this thing as a team.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that? Right? I would say more often than not, that person's going to respond with like, oh, that's a really good point. I've also been thinking about this. I think I can change this, and you may not ever even have to bring up the thing you're pissed off about, but just creating that space, you know what I mean? It's okay if you need to, but like creating the space of comfort and growth, I think is the way to answer your question to approach it.
I think that's great. I think that a lot of, at least the examples that I read about, I feel like the other person is not able to have those conversations. But maybe they are. Maybe you can, scooch them along and y'all can grow together and grow with us. But anyway.
I'm no therapist. Like, you're right. There's probably a group of people that aren't going to be receptive to that. But I'm saying I don't know. I would prefer to be approached that way. Yeah, and I think a lot of other guys would prefer to be approached that way as well.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. This is not a scripted podcast. We have an outline, but that was completely off books, and I'm here for it. I liked it. But let's kind of go into, I wanted to talk about a couple of resources. So a great book, we mentioned it, I think in the first episode about favorite books and How Not to Hate Your Husband After Having Kids. I'll link it in the show notes again. I think it's just a great thing for both of you to read. And again, you can listen to it on audiobook. You can listen to it for free on Libby. Like, it's there. Read it and try to get them to read or listen to it too, because I think it's super helpful on both sides. One that I recently...
You don't hate your husband, do you?
No. Okay. One that I and again, it's not just about how not to hate your husband. It gives both sides. But anyway, another one that I really like that I finished recently, it's very quick. You can listen to it too. It's only 3 hours. How to Keep House While Drowning. I found it on TikTok from the author, and I didn't relate to all of it, but it has, I thought, really good ideas. Like, if you're struggling around the house, like how you can make it better for yourself, and just like maybe ideas to give your community to help you as well. It's also very targeted at those who suffer from like maybe severe depression and things like that. So it's a good resource too. A resource we're really excited about that isn't completely on the market yet is Hearth. You describe it better than I do. Yeah,
it's a hardware and software platform. So think of it as a giant iPad that sits on your wall, typically in a living room or by a kitchen, a high traffic area for a family. Screen. Yeah, and the goal is to, I don't have their problem statement perfectly in my head. I think they help to organize your family's life.
And the mental load.
And help to organize and present the mental load inclusive of the task list and event list for not only you as a family, but all of your kids as well. So think of soccer games, recitals, packing lunches, dentist appointments, doctor's appointments.
The reminders that we talked about.
School rides.
Everybody has a different profile. Anyway, they're still in mostly beta.
It's great.
They're about to reopen orders again. So I'll put their link in the profile too. We don't have ours yet, but we're very excited.
Yes.
And I think that's it for this episode. There's a lot.
It's a good episode. See what happens when you ask me questions? I just go bop, bop, bop,
bop, bop, bop. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you liked it, you can give us a thumbs up on YouTube. You can rate us, review us. Please send us questions, comments, things you want us to talk about, and we'll do it.
Your favorite emoji. A good GIF.
Yeah. You can follow us on Instagram at boygirlmomdot. spelled out, .com, boygirlmom.com. And you can subscribe to our newsletter. I sent one out this morning, which is technically our podcast launch. That's when we're recording. But again, you'll listen to this in a couple of weeks. And I gave little Easter eggs on there. So it's a great way to keep up and have some special intel. And I think that's it.
That's it. Yeah. Thanks for being here. We love y'all.
We love growing with you.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.